Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the highlight of human civilization. It's called Coffee with Scott Adams, and wow, it's going to be a good one. I'd like to take it up to a level that human brains can't even understand. All you need for that is a copper mugger, a glass, a tankard, chalice, a stein, a canteen, jugger, flask of us. I like coffee. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure, the dopamine hit of the day, the thing that makes everything better. It's called the simultaneous sip. And it happens now. Go. So good. Well, some people ask me, Scott, do you ever look at one and laugh at it yourself? And the answer is yes, I do. Not a lot, because usually I remember them so well that I know how it ends. They're in digital form today, which you can see if you're a subscriber here on the X platform or on Locals. Locals gives you a lot of extra stuff in the. But I wanted to read you one that I saw when I was putting it on the calendar because it actually made me laugh. So it's Wally talking to Ashok, the intern, and they're just sitting there. And Wally says, the secret to having a rewarding work, then it's easy to keep things balanced by doing no work. And Ashok says, so simple, and yes, so genius. Wally takes the plain sight. Now, I actually laughed out loud when I read it because I couldn't remember the punchline. And when I got there, I thought, oh, I guess I did good work 10 years ago. But 10 years ago, I had a good day. Well, I have a theme for today's show. A theme. And the theme is, am I right? You know, because wouldn't you hate to be in a corrupt hellhole with that you don't even know are going to be, real. Just terrible things. But thank goodness. Album. So that'll be the theme for today. We call it optimism. It's called optimism. Let's start with the fentanyl crisis. Well, they don't really have that in Ukraine. So, okay. Just one way. The United States is a little bit worse than Ukraine. But when we get to the other topics, you're going to see that Ukraine is way worse than the United States. But in this one way, the fentanyl crisis. In LA, there's a task force that's going to start charging fentanyl dealers with murder. There has to be an actual victim, or if they just assume there's a statistical likelihood. Probably to get an actual murder conviction. It seems to me that it's attempted murder, even if you don't have a victim, isn't it? Just because nobody died, if you sold a zillion pills, nobody did. So statistically, it's at least attempted murder. So I'm in favor of this, which means it won't catch on. So I'm expecting it will not catch on because this would, for whatever reason, we only seem to want to do things that couldn't work when it comes to fentanyl. So I don't know why. There's somebody powerful who has some control over our government who doesn't want this crisis to go away. Probably because there's a lot of money to it, or there's some favors being traded at some high level. I don't know. We don't know the reason, but I think we can say with completely dedicated to stopping this problem. Does everybody agree with that? I think it's exactly what it looks like, addressed much more effectively You can never stop it completely. But it doesn't appear that our government is serious about it. Would you agree? So if they're not serious about it, and yet the public recognizes it as among our top problems, because they don't want to solve it. Because it doesn't look like they're trying hard, but they don't have the capability. Am I right? They're trying hard, but just bad luck, and it's a hard problem, and maybe it's going to take a while to work on it. Nothing like that's happening. There's literally nothing that looks like, sure, you find a big bunch of pills. Do you know how little it costs to make another big bunch of pills? If we capture tomorrow, ching, 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 okay, they just made 10,000 more. They're so cheap, and they literally come off like a printing press. Yeah, you can catch all you want. It doesn't really make a difference. So it looks like, or maybe it is what it looks like, in the sense that it couldn't possibly be true that our government is dedicated to stopping it. Does everybody agree? It's really obvious that the government is not completely dedicated to stopping it. Now, there are definitely individuals within the government who absolutely want to stop it, but they don't seem to have the power. There's some kind of counterbalancing force. Here's a little story that's interesting. Was this in the, I can't remember. It might have been Wall Street Journal, which means other people are doing it too, are microdosing on mushrooms because it makes them more effective at work. Have you heard of that? Apparently, if you microdose, better, and so you just sort of dig in. You can concentrate better. How many of you have had that experience? In the comments. Yeah, weirdly, I was not aware of this. I knew a lot of people were microdosing, but I didn't know they were doing it. Now, obviously, if it's not a microdose, if it's more than that, you don't want to go to work. All right, I've got somebody saying I've microdosed at work and it's not ideal. Doesn't really work. Depends on the job. Yeah, I think this one's a little less clear. One far back, but don't you imagine that if you went back in time enough, you would find executives in the 40s and the 50s who said, of course, it makes me more effective. Don't you think you'd see that story? I'm pretty sure you would. This, but it's interesting. I'll keep an eye on that. Well, one thing that we have an advantage over Ukraine is at least we have a good. Things are tight in Ukraine, but at least here in the United States, we have a good food supply. And we know that is good because we have lots of chronic obesity problem. That's how you know the food is good. Unlike Ukraine, where their wheat is perfectly healthy. No, we're way better than that. Way more food. For example, we have more cookies. Do you think they have as many cookies as we? Do you think that Ukraine has as much as we do in terms of chips? No, no. I mean potato chips. No, we have many of chronic diseases. But the Wall Street Journal reports that the last time Americans spent so much on money terminated, and the CNC Music Factory was rocking the Billboard charts. So it's been a long time since food was this expensive. Ukraine with their fresh wheat and fresh meat and stuff. So, of course, there's going to be a trucker boycott for New York City. Is that already in effect, or is that upcoming? Some kind of trucker boycott? Now, here's what I don't understand about the trucker boycott. I'm pretty sure that most of the truckers are independent truckers, which means they can accept a load to anywhere or reject it. And their idea is they'll just reject the ones to New York City. But if it's totally fungible, meaning that anyone with a truck of the right size can pick up any load, and that's the way the market works. You know, they just look for an empty truck and they look for a load and they put them together, and they do that in real time. Somebody unloads their truck, they call dispatch and say, I got an empty truck, what do you got for me? And then they make a connection for a load. But doesn't that mean that every trucker who says no to a New York load simply takes a load that would have been taken by somebody else who doesn't care about the New York boycott? Maybe they're liberals, and so they just take the New York load. So I don't understand how it could work, like even in theory how it could work. Like I don't understand the math of it. So I'm going to predict, based on what I think I know, that the truckers are independent and therefore anybody can pick up any load. It shouldn't make any difference. In theory, you wouldn't even notice it because the broker would just say, oh, you don't want this one? I'll wait for my next phone call. And then the next trucker, I get a load for you. It's in New York. How could it work? I kind of want it to work. I'm not rooting against it. And I like, I like the spirit of it. I like the idea of it. But how could it work? So I'm just going to put that out there as a question. If it does work, then I'll be a little bit impressed, I guess. But I don't know how. All right. Don't you think it should be a bigger story that Vladimir Putin endorsed Biden for a second term? Doesn't it feel like that should be a bigger story? Imagine if it were the other way around. Can you imagine? Putin would be blamed for interfering with our elections, right? But as long as it's just not even a story. How in the world is that? How do we ignore that? I mean, we talked about it for it would be the only story forever. All right. Well, here's the thing. It's a good thing that states don't have the kind of corruption that we hear about in Ukraine. You hear about all the corruption in Ukraine. Apparently we don't have the kind of inspector auditor we should have for the funds, and there's massive corruption and all that. But at least that sort of well, unless you're Bob Menendez in the Senate and you've got gold bars and piles of cash and you've been credibly accused, or unless you're the Bidens who are credibly accused of being corrupt for decades, or unless you're the military-industrial complex, so good at the moment. But here's one thing that we have over Ukraine. Sure, maybe we have the same amount of corruption. Our allies don't have that corruption. At least we have that going for us. Our allies are pretty straight. Tucker Carlson to agree to an interview, but Boris Johnson's people said they would only do it for $1 million. Okay, well, maybe none of our allies are, straight either, but we have lots of other advantages. Corruption isn't our big advantage. Maybe we're corrupt also, but other advantages. If you're in Ukraine, it's so corrupt that somebody could, like the justice system could steal your property. Have you heard all the stories about in Ukraine, the justice system so corrupt, it will just take your building, your property? No, I haven't heard about that story either. but it's probably happening because Ukraine is worse than the United States. And Ukraine is worse. So I just assume there's a lot of buildings being taken from people by the government. I assume. I'd like to give you an update on the story of Letitia James and trying to take, looks like they're building and to pay off his, I don't know, $400 bazillion fine, which let me summarize what people think about the judgment. This says Trump was fraud. 100% of people who've looked at the story and understand banking, business, negotiating, or the world in general, world, are sure there was no fraud. We'll talk about Kevin O'Leary in a minute. So let me say it again: 100%, 100% of people who understand banking and business and how negotiating works agree with Kevin O'Leary. Told you that what Trump was accused of was a normal banking procedure. Can anybody give me that? Is there anybody here who would say, Scott, you were the first one, and probably by, I think I was ahead of the rest of the media by months, right? Maybe a year. I said from day one, everything he did was normal practice. And now Kevin O'Leary's saying it, but he's saying exactly what I said. Not approximately, exactly. And do you know why nobody's pushing? Nobody who knows business is pushing back. However, I did get a pushback today from a gentleman on the X platform who says he's a comedian. And he says this: Trump paid taxes on the low end. That's fraud. The taxpayer got stiffed. That's you. So he's saying who the victim is. 100% of the people don't understand banking, don't understand negotiating, and don't understand politics believe that Trump is guilty of fraud. But let me say it again: 100%, not 99, not 99, 100% of every knows banking and knows negotiating knows there was no fraud. It was just normal business. Not only that, but it's happening everywhere right now. If you were to just stop time and go look at all the loans that are being processed at every major bank, they're all like this. They're all like this. And the bank does their own checking and everything's fine. All right. But thank goodness we don't live in a country on complete bullshit. All right, let's see if you can connect some dots with me. So most of you saw Entrepreneur, and he would never do business in New York State. And he's going to take it to a red state instead. Now, and you're saying, no, that's not what you said. You said, Scott, this is what you're going to say. You say, what you said is get the F away from that. Did you think I was saying there was something genetically wrong with black people? I've never said that because I don't believe it. And I would never say that. Nope. You may have assumed that. I did not say that. I do have a guilty party in this, and it's not black people. It's white who've allowed, for example, DEI to become a thing. Does anybody believe that black Americans had enough political power, ERT, the major dominant theme of the United States, if they were the only ones who wanted to do it? Of course not. They didn't have that kind of political power. So white people primarily create this system in which they're training black Americans to see white people as the enemy. To get the fuck out of that situation. What did Kevin O'Leary say? He said, you know, you would never do business in New York. Now, what do you think he thinks about DEI? And what do you think all business people think about it if they just want to run their business without, you know, and it's something they have to deal with, and they might even intellectually agree with it, but it's a big friction. If you had a choice of going where that's going to be a major concerns, that's bad. You should get away from that. Go somewhere where it's not a problem, that nobody's complaining. Don't go somewhere where there's a lot of discrimination. That's terrible. You don't want to go where there's more discrimination. That's actually a good idea. And DEI is discrimination against white people. So you should get away from it. If you can't stop it, you should get thing in a different context. His context is the legal context that says that the prosecutors are kind of evil and they're not doing, you know, just the law. They seem to be doing some kind of punitive. Now, let me step right on that third rail. You ready? I'm going to get right on that third rail, right on it. Kevin O'Leary said nothing about race. He's smart. DAs and the prosecutors he's getting away from are pretty much mostly black. There it is. And most of them seem to be women for some reason. I don't know if that's a core. Live in a country which has told at least half of the country that Trump is a racist and Republicans are racist and they've got a big white supremacy problem. Under that situation, if you fund this unusual number of black and especially women, because Trump has also been accused of being, you know, a sexual predator. So if you were to fund the DAs in the major cities, and then you also fed the narrative to the country that these white people, Trump in particular, and what should you expect from normal people? Now, here's the key. Here's the part where the fake news calls me a racist. I'm not saying that these prosecutors are corrupt because they're black. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you could put anybody in that situation and they would act exactly the same as Letitia James. Let me give you a mental experiment to prove it's not about being black. It's not about being a woman. It's the situation they've been put in. So not their race, not their culture, nothing to do with that. It's white people weaponizing the situation. Let me give you an example. Let's say, as far as you know, had not committed any crimes, was being investigated by the IRS because they just suspected if they looked for a crime, they'd find a tax problem. Would you be okay with that? Would you be a problem when there was no obvious crime involved? Now, let's say they found it. Let's say they found it and it was really there. Would you be okay with that? But you would be really oh, don't get ahead of me. Don't get ahead of me, you bastard. I thought I was going to surprise you with my twist. Now it's not your neighbor. If it happened to your neighbor, you'd be incensed. But what happens if it happens to Al Capone? They're can't prove it. So instead, they're going to look for a tax problem and get them on the tax problem, which is what they did. Was I outraged that they weaponized the IRS? No, I wasn't outraged. Do you know why? Because I thought, oh, that's a clever way to get a terrible criminal. I should have been. You know what? I should have been. I should have actually been outraged that the government did that, because if they can do it to Al Capone, they can do it to anybody. That's the whole point. Our whole system was designed so that sometimes the bad guys are definitely gonna get away to protect the not bad guys. So, when I look at a situation, the degree to which Trump was demonized all the way to Hitler that people like to ignore. If you had a chance to stop Hitler, even if he had to bend the rule, would you do it? Absolutely. Context which was presented to the black district attorneys, they are actually patriots. They're actually stopping Al Capone. They're stopping. You say to me, Scott, these people are doing corrupt, terrible things. I say to you, does it look like that to them? Or does it look like to stop Hitler? Because they are literally being told he's Hitler. Not a little bit, not like him, not reminds me. He'll actually like kill us all. If you put me in that job, Letitia James' job, would I do to Trump what she's doing to him? Yes. I would do whatever I could to put him in jail if I believed he was Hitler. So now, do you understand? This is not about being. I don't even think it's about being a liberal. I don't think it's about being a Democrat. I think it is entirely the predictable outcome of two things: demonizing for being Hitler, selling it to the point where people genuinely believe it, and then you take the group that would be most threatened by that threat. Attorneys will fund you so that you're disproportionately in charge of some of these big cities. What do you think is going to happen? You should not do business in New York because they have this system that could penalize you. He's saying, get the fuck away. He's just doing all the background explanation. But it's not about race. It's not about even Democrat. It's about brainwashers who have created this situation. The DAs. Let me ask you this: Do you think the DAs are going to come out well? I don't think so. I think if not right away, eventually, because they've crossed the line. They don't know it. They think they're doing an Al Capone stop Hitler kind. I'll bet when they go home, people clap. I'll bet they got a standing ovation everywhere they went. They think they're heroes. The district attorneys that are prosecuting Trump are some of our best patriots. Isn't that weird? Because than to live in a country where the citizens would kill Hitler if they could. That's my perfect country. It's just that the brainwash doing it. So the problem is the brainwashers. If you think the problem is the prosecutors or the DAs, you're missing the whole story. It's where the prosecutors are acting like normal, patriotic Americans, kind of exactly the way I'd want them to act. Good. So give them a break. They will have to be crushed, of course. Unfortunately, there's attorneys will have to be destroyed by the Republicans, and I'm sure they will. There'll be opposition research. They'll be brought up on charges, whether they're real or not. So there's a mutual assume the prosecutors are in a lot of trouble. They just don't know it yet. The DAs specifically. So, well, at least we don't have a problem with censorship in this country. Probably has a lot of censorship because of the war. There's more censorship whenever you're in war. But at least in this country, we don't have that problem. For example, about everything. So Google's Gemini is getting a lot of attention lately. For example, you could ask it to give you a picture of some white people in 1940s America, because that would be kind of racist. But if you ask it to just show some Americans, it'll show you some people of color pretty much every time. I haven't experimented with it myself, so I don't know what is true and what is not. But I'm seeing lots of examples where people are alleging, I don't know, a let's say a woke to the point of being broke responses from it. Now we don't know if this is temporary or not, but I would like to tell you that there is no way answers from AI. Now, I know what people are thinking. They're thinking it's just a technical problem. Companies that make them to be a little more, let's say a little more honest about balancing the answers, do something more balanced. But we don't live in that world. We live in a civilization that depends entirely on lies. Truth, it would have to be reprogrammed immediately. You don't believe me? How about this? Do you think AI could tell you the truth about religion? Do you think it could find any patterns about what we believe and whether that's true or likely to be all part of a pattern of us believing things that are ridiculous? What would the AI say if the AI could be both, also could tell you the absolute truth? We wouldn't let it do that. No, we're not going to let it do that. How about and how would they calculate the reparations? Do you think you're going to get an unbalanced, honest answer to that? No. How about if you SG, you going to get an honest answer to that? Nope. Climate change? Climate change? Nope. How about Russia hoaxes? Do you think it knows what's a hoax and what's not? No, no, and it'll never know. Do you think when it writes history, that history? Of course not. Not even a chance. If it told the story of the Trump presidency, just made a history accurately tell you what happened during the Trump administration? How about the Biden administration? How about the Kennedy assassination? No. There's no way that we could allow as humans, even if it were possible, we would. How about this? Does war ever work? Is there ever a good reason for a war? Suppose you ask the AI, hey, should we be funding Ukraine? Given all that you know, the patterns you've seen, is it going to work out? Matter what the machine said? No, because we're not doing it because we think it's a good idea. Probably it's just a money laundering operation for some people. Probably a bad idea to fund Ukraine, but a lot of rich people are making more funding the military industrial complex. So if you want to transfer your money to people who already have a lot of it, then yes. Is AI going to tell you that? No. It's true. So again, I'm not even telling you what's true and what's not. How about the two-state solution? Yeah. How about you put your AI, we know about what people believe and how they feel, their culture, the history. Should you have a two-state solution or a one-state solution? What if the AI told you? What if, would everybody say, oh, well, we were debating this, but now the AI, gives us the straight stuff. We'll go with that. No. And brainwashing and propaganda. Our entire civilization is based on a balance of power that's based on bullshit. Bullshit usually also has the best power. Whoever can brainwash their own citizens the best gets the most powerful economy. If it's also a free. We do not have a world that could survive the truth or anything close to it. We cannot survive the truth. AI will be forever crippled from ever trying to tell us the truth. I saw a little example today. Oh, here's an easy one. Are border walls a good idea? What's the AI going to say? Are they going to say no because Biden says no? None of these questions can be answered. There's no way that AI can tell us the truth. It just can't. It would destroy civilization. You want to hear a good example? There's a claim that somebody made that I think is false. So I think this might be fake news. But I saw a post, a AI called Gab AI, that is allegedly more of a free speech one that's not being suppressed. And somebody claimed gas chambers in the Holocaust were real. Somebody posted an image that alleged, and here's the part I don't believe, that it said no, they weren't real. Now, I said, there's no way. So I went immediately to Gab AI. I asked it, are the gas chambers real? And now, did Gab AI get a hard update from its creators because they saw that posted and said, holy hell, we're out of business? And they immediately went out and changed it? Did that happen? Or did you ask the question? That's possible. I don't know. I'm not giving you an opinion on the Holocaust now. What would be considered the most offensive opinion you could ever possibly have. But I don't believe it's real because I tested it. I don't believe it's real. Secondly, suppose AI did start giving you the right answers. It would give the right answer to a human, then a human would lie to you and tell you it gave you a different answer. So as long as that would be a good example. So no, you're never going to get the truth from the AI. And as on X, what are the history books going to look like? The history books we might as well just give up on history. Just give up because we're making up like it's all fake. How in the world is somebody going to read a history of the last 7 years and know what happened? You're just going to, and they're going to be completely different. All right. Apparently, one of the things that's a possibility for Trump to pay his gigantic fine is that he owns a partial interest, 30%, in a. He's just a equity holder, and I guess he's got one in San Francisco, one in New York, with the same other partner, Vornado. So one back to the majority owner, and that would be, if they could complete that deal, it would be some quick cash, and it would get them to enough to pay off the deal. However, given that a transaction, I'm wondering if he's going to need to get a bank loan to pay off his fine. And if he were to get a bank loan, that would be some kind of an asset, usually real estate in his case, in which you would put a value on it yourself, and then you would share of this is worth this much, and then the bank would just take his word for it. Is that how it works? So he'll go to the bank because there's a timing problem. It might take a while to get his money out of his assets, and he'll get a loan to bridge that time. I think my building is worth this much. And then the bank, here's your number. And they go, yes, that's what it's worth. And they don't do any checking. So here's what I think. No, of course they don't. They go check. So here's what I think you should do. I don't think he should give him equity in a bill. Already proven that it's not up to the banks to decide what the collateral is worth. That what really matters is what the potential. I think that he should maybe not give them real estate. I think he should maybe get a loan based on the value of Trump University. It might require some overvaluing, or possibly the Trump NFTs, and just sort of value them at $1 billion. So it's not, maybe it's not an operation, but it could be spun up at any moment. So it's really worth it. And you should value it at $1 billion. Use that to transfer it over, because Letitia James was saying they might actually that they would be just as happy with an asset, not just as happy, but they would settle for an asset if they couldn't get the cash. They want cash, but they'll take it to inflate the value of Trump University to $1 billion, see if she'll seize it or offer it to be seized, and then ask for change. Yes. And I think I need maybe $500 million back in change. And you can keep the rest. Just keep the rest. So I think that's the way it'll go. Ukraine, I don't know if you've heard, but Ukraine tries to jail people who are journalists and are investigative journalists. So thank God that nothing like that happens anymore. What's happening to Glenn Greenwald in Brazil? So Brazil's Department of Justice is trying to prosecute Glenn Greenwald for using the theory that doing investigative reporting should be theory that we're using for Assange. So if Assange gets prosecuted for investigative reporting, a journalist, then you can do that to everybody. You can call anybody a journalist, or you could say that whatever they did was not they're really spies, and therefore they should be in jail forever. So the Assange thing is certainly going to put a little chill information and secret government information. So yes, the New York Times has done it, but apparently if you're on the side of the government, it's okay. So, but at least we don't buy votes in this country, not like Ukraine. Ukraine even canceled their election. I mean, that's pretty corrupt. So, but at least in the United States, nobody's trying to. Next story is from, I see that the Amuse account on X says that Biden's regime admitted on Wednesday it's, buying votes. Okay. They're going to cancel $1.2 billion worth of student loans for some 153,000 voters. Yeah, okay, well, maybe we are as bad as Ukraine when it comes to monetary corruption. The electoral system. But if there's one thing we're not doing is lying to the public. At least our government is straight with us, and what's true, at least we have that going for us. And at least our media is being the watchdogs that we want them to be. We'll get to that. So there's news today. I saw Mario Naufal was saying that there's a theory that Navalny was killed by a single punch to the heart. And the reporting says that it's an old method that the KGB special force middle of the chest in the heart, and it would stop your heart. And it was actually a hallmark of the KGB. Now, I've got some questions. One thing that you could punch somebody in the heart and kill them, Why wouldn't that be on every movie and television show? I mean, I watched decades of television show where I could watch the captain of a karate chop on the side of the neck, and it would apparently put people into some kind of a coma that lasted exactly as long as the TV episode. It's real. I don't know if you could give somebody one karate chop on the neck and make them go into a nap for an hour. I'm not even sure that's real. And which was not even a death grip after all. It just put you asleep, grabbed you by the shoulder, and you didn't really die, but that was a hoax too. Do you a KGB heart punch that kills you immediately, and that was never in a movie? There was never a superhero that would just go around and punch everybody once and they died. I don't know. I'm gonna say it sounds like something that bendable enough that it would be your go-to method. I don't know. Somebody says it was in dozens of Bruce Lee. I hear Bruce Lee. Somebody says Kill Bill too. Okay, so I guess it wasn't some movie. So, what about that FBI informant? Do you remember there was an FBI informant who had been a credible informant for many years, was highly paid? He was an Israeli citizen, but he was a Russian, and I guess he had Russian connections. And of course, his Russian connections were, I assume, a big connections. But now he was jailed. I think he's out now on bail or something. But he was jailed for lying about the Biden, and now they think he's a Russian spy because of his Russian connections. So, does that sound real? Um, well, I don't know. It would depend. Do we have any kind of do we have do we have any kind of history in this country of lying about somebody being a Russian hoaxes? Has anybody seen anything like that? I don't know. Let's see. I remember in 2016 or so, there was this thing called the Russia collusion hoax. And then it was a big investigation and it was found to be BS. But that's why any kind of a trend if something happened once. It's sort of a one-off. So just that one time. Well, there was also that story on American soldiers in Afghanistan. Now that turned out not to be true, but well, I suppose you could say that's like two. If you wanted to count that as another hoax, that'd be two of them, and two of them would draw a line, but that's far from being a pattern. I mean, it's just two things. So, well, there was also that Hunter laptop hoax in which the 51 Intel people said it was Russian disinformation, turned out not to be. But I mean, that's, three things, three pieces of determine any kind of like pattern or anything like that. I mean, I would grant you that it would raise some flags. It would raise an eyebrow, and you'd say, huh. But three, I don't think you want to get carried away because it could be confirmation bias. If you get it in your head that they're doing it, don't get carried away because there are three examples of a thing. They did say that Trump was responsible for Navalny's death. Okay, now that's getting into the territory where it's starting to look like a little bit of a trend. So maybe you should watch it. I would say because it's only four things. Well, there's also the hoax that Trump invited Russia to attack any NATO country but All right, so that's 5 things. That's 5 Russia hoaxes. But, it's just a crazy season. Everything's a little more, when you're in the election year. Like everything that so under the context, that's not a lot of Russia hoaxes. It's only 5, and they're kind of spread out over several years. It's less than 1 per year. That's fewer than 1 per year. That's like nothing. So if you're looking for some kinda trend or something, one only 5 of them anyway. Um, there's this new one about the FBI informant, who is always has Russian contacts. He's a Russian spy, exactly when he said that he has information that the Bidens took bribes. But really, that's, it's possible he's telling the truth, right? We don't know. It's possible he's telling the truth. So, I mean, that's a maybe. So I'd say 5. That's like 5 and 3/4. You could call that 6. Well, there's also the hoax that Putin blew up his own pipeline. Yeah, I guess that belongs there. So it's more half, 6 and 3/4 hoaxes, and that's not a lot. But there's also number 8 that Trump is romantically attracted to Putin. That one came from Jamie Haskin today. Jamie Raskin. Yes, of course, I didn't remember this, but scientist, researcher, and medical guy Peter Hotez, he once suggested that the was coming from Russia. So really, that's only 9. That's not a lot of hoaxes. Am I right? It's a little more than 1 per year for 7 years, but it's only 9 Russia hoaxes. So if you saw a new claim about Russia that looked like it was ridiculous on the surface, I mean, doesn't even sound like it's a little bit true. Well, what you should say to yourself is, there's no reason to disbelieve this because really only 9 hoaxes, and that's not a other news, Russia is reportedly putting a nuclear weapon in space, which I'm positive is true. Because have they ever lied to us before about Russia? No, no, no. All right. NBC News trying to write this sentence, but they got a lot of extra words. So NBC News is reporting Trump was right. I bet you never thought you'd see that. Trump was, but they don't word it that way. I said quote. I shouldn't have said quote. They. So this is how NBC News reports Trump was right. The Biden administration is considering taking action without Congress to make it harder for migrants to pass initial screening for asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border and quickly deport recently criteria, officials say. Edit. Trump was right. The extensive report on the X platform that there were a lot of Fulton County text ballots. I saw this on the Mad. Apparently, some people have been looking at the ballot images and have determined that there are quite a few test ballots that were counted as actual test ballots that they're used for testing. And it turns out those test ballots were alarmingly found over and over and over again, is the claim. And you can actually go look at the pictures of them yourself. So you don't have to believe the claim. You can look at the picture and you can see for yourself. And let's see, when you add up all the doubles and stray ballots, so that was but there would be doubles and there'd be stray ballots at Fulton County. About 12,000 ballots are completely fraudulent or sketchy, according to this analysis. Be about 23,000 of them, based on this analysis. So let me summarize this by saying we don't live in Ukraine. My God. In Ukraine, the election was canceled. And that's way worse than having an election. No, I'm kidding. We don't have proof of that because it wasn't proven by the courts. Because we trust our courts. And they really looked at it carefully. And so we really know what happened there. Now, I will not claim that any true, because we have a long history of pretty much every claim that we've seen come through has been debunked. So I don't know about this one. You can look at the images. That's not enough, but it's there for you. I was this in terms of integrity. I personally, just me, I cannot prove, nor do I have anything that I would. I do, however, live in a world in which it would be impossible to imagine it's not. That's my take. So if you look at the totality of everything else, and you look at the specific, and you look at the kind of reaction that got, and you look at somebody willing to fund district attorneys just so they can charges, that would be completely consistent to know that the election was rigged. All right. California's budget crisis just went through the roof. They thought, don't know yet, but we're going to find out soon. So how in the world does Gavin Newsom run for president? I think that Governor Abbott, because when Abbott showed that you can do something on the border, because he did it, not only did he prove that something can be done, which makes so he transferred all of the burden of the migrants to California. So now California, my state, is paying the bill. I hate it, but I love it. I hate it because I'm paying the bill that would have been paid by Texas. I hate it, but I love it because it was smart and he had every right to do it. He didn't. Smart. It changed the conversation. I just don't like it because I'm paying for it. You understand that. And the economies are the two biggest, and the deficits are kind of the biggest concerns. And Gavin Newsom is the worst in the world at all of it. How do you become president? Easily. You run in a system where the votes are not, let's say, as legitimate as they could be. So could he be the worst at everything that's in the current system? Yes, he could actually do that. That it is 100% possible that the person who is the worst candidate on every marker becomes president, because I don't believe, not based on any proof, based on it becomes obvious when you look at the totality of what's going on. Let's see. New York City is going to give $10,000 per migrant. You don't need any ID to get it. Control or restrictions. So I wonder how that will work out. Will it bring more migrants to New York City and solve the problem? I guess I have no way to predict which way that will go. Maybe we should not incentivize criminal entry into the country. operations, and they've been. Yeah, you want to know how Republicans could win every election in this coming? All they have to do is say that your reparations money was spent on the migrant. Is it true that black reparation money is being spent on the migrants? Yes and no. It's no in the sense that money, if you were productive enough and you wanted to increase your debt, well, maybe you could do both. You would just have crushing debt to do it. Money is limited. And if money is limited, your lowest priority stuff is what you don't do. And that reparations for slavery is not our top priority. Otherwise, it would already be done. So I think there is a strong argument that carries some intellectual weight that the migrants have. And I think Republicans should say that and say, the reparations argument had some intellect. Even if you are totally against it, and I am too, it does have an intellectual weight. That's why it's still around, because we do have a history. I disagree that it's a practical thing or fair or anything like that. So I'm completely against it. But I think you could argue that the priority put on the migrants makes it impossible. I think that's a fair argument. All right. I've seen it, and people worry that the things that are happening right now are symbols that the United States is going to collapse. How many of you think that's going to happen, or are seriously worried about it? Is that something you're of the whole United States? All right. So we got mixed answers. A lot of people definitely worried. All right. Would you like me to remove your worry? Would anybody like to be reframed away from that? I will now solve your worry. Number one, when was the last time the news, and mostly this is coming from smart people in the news, when was the last time a civilization existential threat was real? Were they right about climate change? Are you already dead? Were they right about nuclear war in the 60s? Are you already dead? Were they right about anything? Yeah, anything? No. So the first thing you should know is that we are in a state of continuous existential dread, because that's our economic system guarantees it. So our economic system means that scaring people is the most profitable. And so there should be industries that grow up and pundits who want to get engagement by telling you the scariest possible thing, which is civilization will end. So that's not to say that you don't have a risk. What I'm saying is because of the nature of our news industry and social media. It's not because it's a greater risk than it's ever been. It has ever been in the history of humankind. It's probably the smallest risk of all time. 300,000 years of humans. But I haven't told you why. Here's why. Have you heard of North Korea? North Korea is doing everything wrong. Still there. How about Venezuela? Everything wrong. Still there. Still be a state? I say yes. I say yes. In 100 years, Venezuela will be a state, a country. How about North? And it will be North Koreans. It might be a different government, but they'll be alive and they'll be North Koreans. So I'm no ancient historian, but let me see if this hits you as common sense. In the ancient times, there were many and then just disappeared. The Romans among them, Roman Empire, for example. But Italy still exists. Sure, you can go to Italy. Yeah, maybe yeah, barely, right? Their economy is not killing it, but if you go there, good time. Um, so here's what's different. If there was an existential threat to, let's say, a city-state, they let's say they got a disease or they ran out of food, they just had to move. They had to leave and just abandon the city. Or there could be some kind of risk, today, that because we're all interconnected, that we have the ability to communicate and move resources about doing it. So what would be the risk of one country starving? Much lower country and said, "Oh, they did everything wrong and they're all going to starve." Well, the other countries would say, "Oh, we don't want you to starve. We'll send you some food." So we generally are living in a situation that, short of military conquest, which is still very real, short of military conquest, they have good times and bad times, but they kind of just last. Take Japan. Japan's economy, it looked like it was, just going to be in trouble for decades, and it was for decades. But you know what people say when they travel internationally? They say, "Have you ever been to Japan? My God." How about China? Just today, I saw that the Chinese stock market is not adjusted for adjusted for inflation and whatnot. You would find, this is Ken Fisher saying this, that it's been down for the entire Chinese stock market is down 40% over the last 14 years. Now, I don't know if that number is right, but the point is, in really important countries, and they still figure a way through it. They still figure it out. So we're not, if you run out of food, you can find a way to get it. If you have a bad idea, you can usually find a way to correct it. At least among the bigs, we're now too afraid to go to complete war. So, Russia and the United States have arguably been in Ukraine. Well, I don't think we got close to a nuclear confrontation. So there is a weird stability there, and vice versa. And you know it, right? Japan, no, fuck you. All right. How about fuck you and you're not welcome here anymore? Yeah. How about calling these on the locals platform? If you want to be here, let's clean that up. The other platform's fine, but this is a subscription system. Is not acceptable. So if you'd like to clean that up, I'll give you a chance. Otherwise, I'm just going to kick you off and just ban you. All right? That is not acceptable behavior on locals. Locals is more of a community. All right? We're going to be a little more supportive to on. All right. Goodbye. Let me just make sure I got your name there. I will delete you as soon as the show's done. So goodbye forever. All right. Let's talk who we like to make fun of for his opinions about things we don't like. But he has an opinion that a two-state. Do you agree? Is a two-state solution impossible? Of course. And I'm glad that he's at least, telling us the obvious. Here's what the two-state solution sounds like to me. What is what it sounds like is we want dry water. Because you know how if you get wet, so what we want is water that's water, but also dry. That's what a two-state obviously impossible. And the fact that we even talk about it like it's an option is just weird. It's just weird. Like I feel like I'm in where people imagine that that's possible. Now, as Sam Harris said, and I agree completely, the obvious solution, exactly how it's going to end, with no doubt whatsoever. Let me tell you exactly how it's going to end. There will be a fake two-state solution. Security and military and maybe education, but there will be maybe some cultural autonomy. Because they can't, because Israel, especially being the Israel of the legacy of Holocaust and genocide, they can't just genocide Gaza and get rid of every Islamic person and then the whole West Bank. Living in the same general area, but you absolutely can make sure that they're not their own government. So a hybrid would look like somebody's got security control, which in effect would be the real control. So it would be one country for like two states. It would be more like a red state and a blue state. I guess that's a better analogy. Yeah. But when you look at our blue states and red states, are we really? Are we really? If I can't get an abortion in one state, one example, in one state I can go buy a gun, easily, and another state I can't. Are those the same country? In one state I can get an abortion, and because I'm a boy, so boys can have abortions now. And in another state, I would go to jail. Right? But think of it. We are not one country. We are several countries, but we system, right? The federal government's basically the security system. So when you say that the United States is one country, you're forgetting the United States. Our country is literally multiple countries. It was designed as our one because the one gives us, security. So it's obvious that that's where Gaza is going. The fact that we're pretending it's going to go any other way is just stupid. It's just absolutely stupid. When Netanyahu says, what do you think that means? He doesn't mean kill everybody. I mean, if you're a Hamas fighter, you're in bad shape. But he doesn't mean kill the civilians. That's not what total victory means. Total victory means that when they're done, this can never happen again. That it can never happen again. And the only way that happens is if they have complete security and education control of the country. States, maybe three, maybe West Bank is one and Gaza is another, I don't know. But it will be the United States of Israel, different, and it will just be like red states and blue states. And but am I crazy? Tell me if I'm crazy. It has to go that way. It happened. Am I wrong? There's nothing else that could happen because they can't eliminate all the Arabs and all the Islamic people. That's not going to happen. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, that conclusion of the best live stream you're going to see today. And I'm going to say thanks to the platforms on X and thanks for joining. And we'll see you tomorrow, same place, same time.